And welcome once again to this week's edition of Travel World 95. I'm Stephen Pickford. On today's show, charter airlines. They've come a long way since the 70s and early 80s when all they did was compete solely on price. Now, today's consumer is demanding more in the way of in-flight service, more in the way of reliability. We'll be joined later on today's show by Jimmy Gabay of Royal Airlines, talking about how he has changed his airline's focus to meet today's consumers' requirements. But first, each business day, hundreds of Montreal travelers whose final destination in Toronto is ultimately the downtown financial core of the city, instead, out of sheer habit, travel to Pearson Airport instead, and then regret that fact for the rest of the day as they sit in traffic, wait for air traffic control delays, and more. There's a more convenient, more reliable, more user-friendly alternative to Pearson, and it's Toronto City Centre Airport. Joining us on today's program is Michelle Nolan, District Sales Manager of Air Ontario, operating this service. Welcome to Travel World.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, it's been almost 10 years now since the old City Express with Vic Pappalardo started the service from Dorval to what was then referred to as Toronto Island. It's taken off with great popularity out of Ottawa, but so far it's still unknown by Montrealers. Why would you say it is?
Well, that's true, Stephen, and we're still trying to find reasons as to why. We feel that probably the biggest reason is a lack of awareness with Montrealers on Toronto City Centre Airport and its close proximity to the downtown core.
Well, also, I think some of the lingering doubts remain from that City Express era when some of the flights might have been delayed or what have you. So why don't we go over a few points now to refute some of the misconceptions the passengers might have. Why don't you tell us a bit more about Air Ontario itself and your relationship within the Air Canada system?
Well, Air Ontario is one of 5 Air Canada Connector airlines. As an Air Canada Connector airline, we enjoy a close commercial alignment with our parent company. And that alignment allows us to offer our passengers the same benefits that Air Canada passengers would receive. At Air Ontario, we are certainly a force to be reckoned with at Toronto City Centre Airport. We just celebrated our 5th anniversary there. And we feel we have a good product. We have 13 flights in and out of Toronto City Centre and Montreal's Dorval Airport every business day, as well as service 8 times a day in and out of London, Ontario, and Montreal.
Okay, and another question that sometimes people have is because they're not totally sure about the Dash 8 aircraft. They say, oh, a small aircraft, it may not have a washroom, we're scared to fly it. That's totally unwarranted, totally unfounded. What about the Dash 8?
Well, Air Ontario is actually one of the largest Dash 8 operators in the world at present. And the Dash 8 is Canadian-made de Havilland aircraft and is the most widely accepted propeller aircraft in the marketplace right now. The interior is very comfortable. In fact, it's been compared to a DC-9. So travelers don't feel claustrophobic. Tall travelers don't feel uncomfortable in the Dash 8.
Right, because I've found that the legroom on the Dash 8 is actually superior to a lot of the equipment being flown into Pearson. It's quite roomy inside.
No, the Dash 8, as I mentioned, is really quite a comfortable aircraft.
And of course, you do have full in-flight service, snacks, beverages.
Yes, we have all the benefits on the Dash 8 that you would receive on the Air Canada jet. We have overhead bins, washroom facilities, and full in-flight service.
Okay, now, when you say full in-flight service, what exactly would be like a typical snack at, let's say, breakfast or late afternoon?
You're not going to just get a bag of peanuts on Air Ontario, which is a misconception with a lot of regional carriers. People assume that when they're flying a turboprop aircraft that they're not going to be fed. So we try to combat that by actually offering full meals around meal periods. Although we don't have ovens on board, we do get very creative with our cold meals. So for breakfast, you're looking at a large fruit salad and a standard-sized muffin. For lunch, you're looking at a full-size sandwich, and for dinner, maybe a nice salad with cold chicken.
Right, so it's basically a superior food service than you would have had on many of those flights to Pearson, where, especially in the dinner hour, you will get nothing.
Well, Air Canada does offer full meals during the dinner hour, but in fact, a lot of the smaller U.S. carriers particularly don't offer much in the way of food services.
And also, I think part of the allure of taking the service to the City Centre Airport is the more personalized attention that one gets. It seems to be sort of that down-home, small-town Ontario feel to it.
One of the major feedbacks we get from our loyal users is the fact that although they're arriving in the big metropolis of Toronto and downtown, in fact, they feel like they're arriving in a small city. It has that charm to it. And Air Ontario is pleased to announce that we just opened a new terminal in November that has features and benefits that weren't previously offered in our old terminal. And a few of the features are a covered walkway to the aircraft, which we did not have before. We also feature a separate business center with partitioned workstations, phones, and fax machines, which is very similar to Air Canada's Maple Leaf Lounge. And lastly, and more aesthetically, we're offering a sunken departure lounge complete with fireplace. So again, adding to the charm of the airport.
Right, it's not your typical airport departure lounge with rows upon rows of chairs.
No.
Oh, okay, that's nice to hear. Now, also, your company pioneered what is now standard throughout the Air Canada system and is carried by a number of other commuter carriers. That's the SkyCheck service. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, we all know business travelers don't have the time to check baggage. They want to have their bags on hand. So to alleviate congestion on board with overhead bins and jostling and lack of legroom, we designed a SkyCheck cart that's placed at the foot of the steps of the aircraft. When the passenger is enplaning, they just place their bag on the cart and off they go, and there's no congestion on board. When they arrive at their destination and they're deplaning, the bag's waiting for them and off they go.
Okay, now they've arrived at the city centre airport. How do they get to downtown? I know the Toronto Harbour Commission is always touting it as the world's shortest ferry ride at 2 minutes, but how does that all operate?
Well, you're absolutely right, Stephen. In fact, that ferry ride is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the shortest ferry ride. It's a 2-minute crossing. The passenger has actually 3 options when they arrive. They can make use of our complimentary shuttle bus, which is waiting for the aircraft to arrive, and that deposits them at the Royal York Hotel, which is feet away from most business addresses. Their second option is to make use of car rentals, and there are 2 major car rental companies with hotlines right in the terminal. The rest are a short walk away from the Royal York. Or thirdly, they can catch a cab from the fully stocked cab stand on the mainland.
Okay, now they've arrived at the Royal York, and of course, they, when they get there, they have the full Toronto transit system at their disposal, Go Transit. It really opens up the entire city for them. Now, how does it work coming back?
Coming back, again, they have the 2 options. They can make use again of the complimentary shuttle bus, which departs from the Royal York every half an hour on the quarter hour. We'd recommend they be on that bus 45 minutes prior to departure. Or in fact, they can make their own way to the docks, which are located at the foot of Bathurst Street, and make use of the ferry. The ferry operates every 15 minutes on the quarter hour, and we'd recommend they be on the ferry half an hour before their flight.
And the old City Express used to operate the same type of shuttle service in Montreal. Has there been any thought given to doing the same on your part here in our city?
No, because we are an Air Canada airline, Air Canada Connector airline, our role is not to compete with Air Canada, but to offer a complimentary service to the Rapid Air product. If in fact we were to offer a complimentary shuttle bus to downtown, that would be considered competitive.
Now, we talked earlier that there's a total of 13 flights a day round trip in the Montreal-Toronto market. If somebody were to, for example, miss your last flight of the day, which is at 6:15 at night, so that ticket is fully interchangeable with coming back later out of Pearson.
Well, again, that's the beauty of the Air Canada relationship, because you can mix and match the 2 airports. You can fly into one and out of the other. For all intents and purposes, we're Air Canada, and that way we offer the choice and flexibility of either airport.
Now, the primary composition of your passenger load would, of course, be the business traveler. Do you see that increasing to perhaps a more leisure-oriented load on the weekends? I know you're offering for a weekend fare that is less restrictive than Air Canada, for example.
Air Canada and Air Ontario both offer a weekend fare in and out of Toronto City Centre and Toronto Pearson. It's designed to stimulate the last-minute weekend traveler because there's no advance purchase, and it is very reasonable. We would hope to have more of that traffic than we presently have, particularly for people who are going to Blue Jays games or last-minute theater. It's a perfect airport.
Okay, and on that note, for example, your weekend fare does begin at, I think, 11:30 on Fridays rather than the traditional 7 p.m., so somebody could get more of a weekend out of flying into the city centre airport than they would if they flew into Pearson.
That's correct.
Now, your schedule, primary concern to the business traveler is reliability. What is your on-time performance been, let's say, over the last few months?
Well, Stephen, our on-time performance and reliability is the best it's ever been. In fact, we just celebrated our 5th anniversary, and we've never had performance like we've had. And that's primarily due to our aircraft being equipped with microwave landing systems, which allow the aircraft to land on instruments as opposed to visibility. Pilots don't need the same cloud ceiling that they used to need to land.
Okay, now are there any additional plans to add more flights to Montreal at this time, or add additional cities out of the city centre airport?
Well, we're always looking at new opportunities, Stephen. At this point, there's nothing in the plan, but that doesn't mean we're not going to look at doing something. We're very successful at Toronto City Centre Airport with Ottawa, so we hope to continue to be successful with Montreal.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, letting us know a bit more about the City Centre Airport on today's show, and hopefully more Montrealers will certainly take advantage of the convenience and that reliability in the future. Coming up after we look in at what's going on this week in the Travel Corner, Jimmy Gabay of Royal Airlines, how the charter airline industry has changed for the better.
Hello, my name is Jennifer McMorrin. In today's Travel Corner, we'll be talking about guides for people planning to spend their vacations a little closer to home. The first guide I brought in today is that Affordable Bed and Breakfast Guide for Quebec. It lists bed and breakfasts, farm stays, farm excursions, and country-style dining. Inside the guide is a list of all the bed and breakfasts with a description of the bed and breakfast and a drawing and directions on how to get there. There are also prices for single, double, triple, and quadruple occupancy, as well as information on country-style dining, farm stays, and farm excursions. Farm stays are like a bed and breakfast, but on a farm. Farm excursions are visits that last usually about a day to a farm where children can visit with animals and learn about the raisings of animals on farms. And country-style dinings are small restaurant-style places where you can go and have a country-style meal with a group. The next guide I've brought in is Hiking in Quebec. This is the only guide available for hiking in the province of Quebec. It lists the best hikes throughout the province, as well as various practical information on how to get there, the difficulty of the hike, the length of the hike, and any accommodation available in the area. It's a very complete guide that lists the best hikes in the province, the most beautiful scenic hikes throughout the province. Also in the same series is Hiking in the Northeastern United States. There are already several guides on the market for hiking trails in the northeastern U.S. However, this one provides a listing of the most picturesque and beautiful hikes in that area. It covers the states of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and the state of New York. Once again, it has difficulty ratings for each hike, the length of the hike, and practical information on hotel accommodations and so on in the area around the hike. The last guide I've brought in is the Michelin Guide to California. This is a new release this year. Michelin doesn't cover a lot of the U.S., but it does cover California this year. The Michelin Guide is a guide, probably the most complete guide on practical information for a given country. It doesn't give hotels and restaurants, but it more than makes up for it in terms of cultural information on the sites, architecture, history, and the museums. So those are the 4 guides I brought in today.
And Jimmy Gabay of Royal Airlines drops by to join us now. Welcome to Travel World.
Thank you.
Now, we've seen over the past decade several charter companies come and go in the Canadian market. Nationair, Minerve, Worldways, to name just a few. Now, these were lines that tended to be only focusing on the price element of the marketing equation. That was their whole raison d'etre. Service and reliability was not one of their priorities. It was secondary. So to the uninitiated who may, in an unwarranted fashion, try to put Royal Airlines in that same category, why don't you lead us in with a bit of a background on the history of your firm?
Well, Royal Airlines was formed 3 years ago now. It's an offshoot of Conifer Airlines, which is a company that has done a lot of work in terms of forest fires, etc., etc. We are now a public-owned company with shares, and to get back to your question in terms of whether we position ourselves in terms of pricing, this is not at all our strategy. We position ourselves much more on destinations that will have a market for an airline and planes of our size. Secondly, we put a lot of onus on our service, our in-flight service, our on-time percentage, yes, and other aspects of our passenger service.
And your company was founded by Michelle Nolan, who
yes,
many of our viewers will remember from Inter.
Yes, from Inter-Canadian, from Quebec Air, and he was the founder of Conifer also. And he's been at the head of this company, and he's made it a very successful company.
Right, because he's a hands-on operator.
Yes, he is.
And I know that he had mentioned when he had started Royal right at the beginning that he was trying to pattern your level of service after Ward Air, for instance.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. We do get a lot of commentary from our passengers, and I would say at least 1 out of 5 letters mentions us in the same breath as Ward Air, which pleases us very much, knowing what kind of quality Ward Air was offering.
Right, and basically in the end of their years as Ward Air was a scheduled carrier, so they're comparing the service they're getting on a charter carrier, what is still operating as a charter carrier, with what they were receiving from a scheduled carrier, which are high accolades indeed. Mm-hmm. So you're based here in Montreal?
Yes, we are.
And how many employees do you have?
We have, as of now, 350 employees. And
all here in Montreal?
No. We have a lot of them based in Toronto. Out of Toronto, actually, we have, I would say, 2/3 of our flights originate in Toronto, and 1/3 out of Quebec. And we've been expanding. This summer, we'll have a plane based in Vancouver also.
Oh, okay. So basically, you're expanding slowly but surely, not trying to be in every market.
Yes.
Now, what type of equipment do you operate?
This summer, we'll be using 3 L-1011s and 7 Boeing 727s.
And the average age of the fleet would be?
Oh, I would say they're fairly new. I would say it would be around between 10 and 15 years, I would say.
Okay. Now, let's also now start talking about onboard service, because we've touched upon it before, but that's probably the #1 thing that the passenger is looking for. Right from check-in through the flight itself. I read somewhere that you have your crew actually at the check-in counter?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We pride ourselves as being known as the all-inclusive airline, and all-inclusive is a term very much used these days in terms of hotels. The reason why we use that term is that once our passenger purchases a ticket, we don't want him to spend another penny on our flight. We have our personnel waiting for them at the counter, like the flying personnel will be at the counter to make sure everything's all right and just greet them with a smile. That's already our first positive step. Once they get on board, as soon as we take off, we'll offer them complimentary sparkling wine so they can toast their vacation. Our wine, for instance, during meals is first quality imported French wines, red or white, and we serve digestif after the meal, which are top quality digestif also. On our flights where we do have entertainment in terms of video and music channels, our passengers do not pay also for the earphones. And the last reason why we're called the all-inclusive airline is we make arrangements so that passengers who would have a bit of extra luggage or a sports bag or anything else will not have to pay for extra luggage if we can accommodate them in terms of space. So basically, our passenger does not pay for anything.
Right, they pay the one price for transportation, and they're not being charged.
Exactly, for drinks or other
another
things.
$1 here and another $1 here, which is what bothers a lot of people.
I'm sure it does, yes.
And so this has led, I've also seen that you've, on the bottom of your advertising, you're mentioning that you've won a couple of awards. What are those awards?
Well, actually, last year was an excellent year for us, and we've won the Charter Airline of the Year from the Quebec Travel Agents. Our president was a Personality of the Year in the industry. Michelle Nolan won that. And also our tour operator, which is affiliated with us, Royal Vacations, did pick up the Atlas for Best Tour Operator of the Year. So it was a royal year last year.
Right, in more ways than one.
Yes.
Now, we've also mention briefly that on-time performance is the goal of the carrier. How successful have you been, like percentage-wise? How many of your flights have operated on
Well,
time?
it's very hard to go into percentages, but I would say we're hugely successful in terms of keeping on-time departures. Obviously, we'll have some mechanical problems once in a while, and that's an aspect of Royal that not too many people know also, is that once we get past a certain point of people waiting at the airport, you know, we'll obviously pay for meals or hotel accommodation, whether it's in Montreal or in other destinations. And we'll also give, as soon as those passengers come back, $100 per person, just for them to swallow the pill a bit better, you know, that they lost a few hours of their vacation time.
Right, of course, people don't want an unsafe aircraft to take to the air.
You know, the passenger is our first priority. And when we do have a mechanical and we're forced to delay a flight, obviously, we do it with the security of the passenger in mind foremost.
Right. Now, what routes are you presently serving this summer?
This summer out of Montreal, we do go to Europe. We go to Paris 6 times a week. And we go also to Athens once a week starting on 19th of June. In terms of our southern destinations, we'll be doing Florida as we do all year round. We do fly to Cuba, the Dominican Republic. And in terms of domestic this summer, we will have some flights out of Montreal to Calgary and Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
Out of Toronto, it's a much bigger
Right, you have a bigger
market.
program out of Toronto.
Yes, yes.
Now, how does the summer program differ from the winter program? What other cities do you add in the winter?
Oh, we do fly to many more islands in the wintertime. Obviously, it's a much more high season for southern destinations. We fly to many destinations in Mexico. We add Venezuela. We add Martinique, Guadeloupe, Saint Martin. Many the islands that we would add. We're not sure right now in terms of our next winter's program. It's being discussed right now, but it should be a fairly full complement of destinations.
And of course, you have to review how this past season has been
Yes.
before you go on to others. Now, when you look at potential other destinations to serve, are there any destinations that you would like to add that you may be presently investigating?
We are investigating many destinations as of now because of the new Open Skies treaty that was signed. And it gives us access to many, many destinations inside of the United States. Obviously, we're looking at that any destination which could be worthwhile for us where we figure there is a market. And we would be looking at those destinations out of many gateways in Canada, not only Montreal or Quebec or Toronto. Right now, we're in the stage of researching and doing market studies on many cities in the U.S. I couldn't tell you any more information as of now because it's private information.
Right.
But I'm sure we'll be able to announce many new destinations in the coming months.
And this would be operated on a charter basis or as a scheduled carrier?
Well, the way things are with the United States and with the new Open Skies, it's much easier in terms of paperwork and red tape just to apply for a scheduled license. And it gives us better access to slots also in different cities. So right now we're in the process of changing our flights into the U.S. from charter to schedule. And all the new destinations we'll be doing into the U.S. will be scheduled destinations.
And sometimes this also has the benefit of perhaps listing in an airline computer reservation system, or at least making the schedule to be sold northbound as well as southbound.
Yes. One thing that we will do, though, is keep our distribution network exactly as it is. As you know, when you're a scheduled airline, you have a possibility of selling to the consumer with a direct phone number, which we will not do. We're very pleased with the way we are distributed right now with many tour operators and travel agencies, and this is the way we'll continue on doing that.
Right, perhaps following sort of the lead of a company like American Transair in the States, this comes to mind as almost the same type of format that they've grown from a charter carrier to a scheduled carrier, but maintaining the same form of distribution that they had. Now, as an integrated operator, because you mentioned your tour wholesaling wing, are the aircraft totally devoted to them, or do you share them with the others?
No. We treat Royal Vacations exactly as any of our other clients in Quebec, whether it be Tour Mont-Royal or any other ones that we deal with, Salvac, etc., etc. And they would, like the other tour operators, purchase a block of seats on the destinations they're interested in running and where they want to have programs.
So there's still competition. You keep sort of at arm's length the airline from
Yes.
It just serves as another means to distribute your
Exactly,
product.
exactly.
And at
But-
least you have a built-in sales force, what have you, if,
Yes.
for example, the other carriers move to...
Well, it's a safety valve. We went through a situation this winter where one of our longtime clients, Mirabel Tours, unfortunately had to close its doors. And Royal Vacations helped us out in terms of picking up those seats and marketing them for us.
And while you may not market solely on price, of course, price is sometimes always in the mind of the consumer. So recently, Air Canada and Canadian have run advertisements talking about how their fares are matching the charter carriers. How does this affect a company such as yours when these companies come in and market it like that?
It will affect us in terms of our domestic programs because this is where Air Canada and Canadian are matching charter prices, and they're doing that with all the charter companies. I can tell you that obviously we can go lower, and we will decide to do that on which destinations we will do that. In terms of marketing, we cannot compete in terms of frequency with those airlines, and we cannot compete in terms of bonus points that they give Aeroplan, et cetera, et cetera. But we can compete in terms of service, definitely. I would say that our service is vastly superior to many of the other airlines that do domestic destinations this summer. So we will be competing on that, and we're ready to go in with lower prices where the situation warrants it.
Right, so basically you're looking at loyalty of the customer who has already sampled your service and knows that you offer a superior product.
We find this is our best publicity, is word to mouth, and we find that many of our passengers do ask for Royal the second time around, and we're very pleased with that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jimmy, for dropping by and talking to us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And that about does it for us here on Travel World 95 for this week. Remember, your input is vital to the success of our program, so please do drop us a line with your story ideas, items you'd like to see on future editions. You can reach us at Travel World 95, CF Cable TV, 405 Ogilvie Avenue, Suite 200, Montreal, Quebec, H3N 2Y1. From all of us here at Channel 9, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you again next time, right here. Till then, happy traveling, everyone.